Okay, we're about to do a chapter on systems of equations, and these pop up a lot everywhere. I'm going to start us off by doing some word problems and learning how to graph and understand the solution on your graphing calculator or your GeoGebra. GeoGebra will be a separate video. And of course, I wouldn't necessarily expect you to be able to do this right off, but I'm going to do a couple and then you're going to try some. So here's a girl who spent $131 on shirts. The fancy ones cost $28 and the plain ones cost $15, and total she bought 7. So we could use F for fancy and P for plain, but since we're going to use our graphing calculator, you should use Y and X. So I'm going to say X is the number of fancy, Y is the number of plain. So what do I know then? I know that the total number is 7. And then where do the costs come in? Well, if it's $28 for every fancy shirt and $15 for every plain shirt, total she spent $131. So there's my two equations. If you have two unknowns, you need two equations to solve them. We'll get more into that later. So in order for me to put this in my calculator, I have to get y by itself. So in this case, y will be 7 minus x. In this case, I'm going to try to get you guys to think about how you would do this in sort of one fell swoop. Well, in order to get y by itself, the first thing I would have to do is to subtract 28x. And then once I have that quantity, I would need to divide by 15. So if you write it just like that, I'm going to have to subtract 28x, and then I will have to divide by 15. So I'm going to go to my calculator. And it might be hard for you guys to see this, but this is y equals, so I want to go to y equals, and you want to make sure they're clear. You can always clear things, and you want to make sure your plots are off. So like if that means my plot's on, so I can just go over to it and hit enter and it turns it off. So I'm going to do 7 minus x in my first one. Your x is right there. And then in my second one, the parentheses are significant. I'm going to do 131 minus 28x, end my parentheses, then divide by 15. You also need to have a good window. I'm just going to take you back to the window they normally, my bad, don't look at that just yet. A standard window is always nice. That's a negative 10 to 10, negative 10 to 10, and I can see my intersection, which is what I'm looking for. But if you go to window, we could think about number of shirts, and the minimum number of either shirt we would buy is 0. And if we're only spending 131, likely the maximum number of shirts we would get of either fancy or plain is 10. So 0 to 10 fancy shirts, 0 to 10 plain shirts. And this scale is just how often you'd put a tick mark if you were making a graph. It's not really all that relevant. So if I go to the graph under this circumstance, I can see my intersection a little better. And that's my solution. How many of each did we buy? That's where the two equations are equivalent. They share that point. So how do I find that point? You guys can't quite see this, but that says trace. So if I go to second trace, which is calculate, C-A-L-Calc, I can find the intersection. And it wants to know if this is my first curve, because you never know how many lines or curves you'd have on there. And certainly that's our first curve, so I just press enter. And then it wants to know if this is the other curve, and you can't see your little spider right now, but yes, that's my other curve. And then it always asks you to make a guess, and I just blow that off, so I just press enter again. And there you can see it's telling me my intersection is 2, 5. So what I like you to do is for your solution, I like you to sketch it. And X was fancy, and Y was plain. And my solution is 2, 5. So that's my X, that's my Y. 2 fancy, 5 plain. And we could go back here and check that. 2 plus 5 is 7. 2 times 28 is 56. 5 times 15 is 75. Is that right? And sure enough, 7 plus 5 is 12, 6 plus 15 is 11, so 120 plus 11 is 131. So that's a video of how to set it up, how to use your calculator, and then I'll show you how you would do that on GeoGebra. I'm just going to make that one short, and then I'm going to do another one that just shows you how to set a bunch up. So we'll stop there for now.